Okay, so I recently shared a post. It was basically a still image of this object that I created, and I kind of asked what people thought it was. And most people that that actually ventured to guess were correct. It is an expansion screw. Okay, so if I flip over to Great Lakes Ortho website, this is basically what it is. Now, when you buy it, it's going to have a little black tab that sticks out of here. And at this point, I'm going to break to a little video that I just created prior to making this that shows it in hand to explain what it is this looks like.
Okay, so this is a very basic expansion screw. And I'm no big lab expert, but the idea with this is it can be used incorporated into an acrylic expander, like a Schwartz appliance, and you traditionally will embed the bottom portion here in a stone model. So you'll trough it out, you'll place this in wax or some other material, and then flow acrylic around it to invest it, to lock it in, and then create whatever attachment you're going to have to your actual to the teeth and to the patient. So I'm going to talk about that in a follow-up video. I just want to show in person or whatever physically what this object looks like. You're going to see the same screw here on Great Lakes Ortho's website. But I wanted to show it because I wanted to show you what the actual holder looks like. So there you go.
Okay, so I'm going to pick back up in this video. Hopefully I cut these two videos together well. So you can see that what I've created is that screw with that little black tab that sticks out of it. And so now I can sort of visualize what this looks like in the real world. Now, just note, I didn't model this to be exact. There's certainly some more geometries to it that could further enhance it, such as these parts indent here on both sides. This is threaded, and all of these dimensions that I've created are all rounded up. You know, around average 0.05 or 5/100ths of a millimeter to 1/100th of a millimeter. The idea being this is sort of a shadow or basically an encapsulation of it, because I'm going to try to use this to separate out, to do sort of a Boolean operation, a subtraction from another physical model. And so, I mean, honestly, the way I'm going to name this video, you probably know that's where I'm headed. So anyway, this is the object I've created. I have exported this whole object as one. See, turn it on, turn it off. I can separate objects out, creating these cylinders as movable objects, but that's not really helpful for this, not necessary. Over-engineering there. But I've also created another body, which is this. Now, this is not part of the object, but what this is going to do, this is going to generate a plane cut for me, a separation of the left and right halves of this appliance. Okay, so again, I've exported both of these bodies. Okay, I paused the video so I could find the folder. I've exported them both to this folder, and I have it under the U-Penn Appliance folder on my computer. One is the appliance, this splitter, and this is the expansion screw. So not exactly sure how I'm going to use all these. Now, the one thing I should warn you about, I should have warned you earlier in the video. This video, I have not done this workflow before. I am creating it on the fly, and I just wanted to share basically how it would work, assuming it does work. If it blows up in my face, I won't be posting this video. There will be some extra junk in this video, things I screw up, whatever. Truth be told, I really want to get this out there. I think it'll be helpful to people, and I don't have time to rehearse it. I don't have time to sit through and do a bunch of these just to get the right way to put together a video. So if that's not of interest to you, if you just want a clear-cut video, well, you're not going to get one from me, probably. I'm most likely not going to recreate this video if it works, unless it, like, again, blows up in my face. So hopefully it is helpful, and maybe you'll potentially learn something about how I screw up and how I work around things when I screw up, because I screw up a lot and realize mistakes I've made and things that teach me how to do better when I design new things. So anyway, I'm going to pause for a second so I can open up Blue Sky Plan software, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so here's the case I designed in a previous video, just showing how to do the actual workup, determining where you're going to place your implants in a U-Penn type appliance, and how to create a surgical guide to help make that happen, to come to fruition when you actually go to work clinically. So at this point, we have we have a model that we have actually exported, and in the previous video. So what I'm going to do now is let me see. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this from the underside. Okay, so in the last video, I did already export this model with the implant sticking out. Now I did that so that the lab could essentially create an appliance that would drape over top of these implants, be passive fit and whatnot. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to create one yourself digitally, or at least that's my hope. As I said earlier, who knows if this is going to work? We will see. So the file that I exported are right here in this folder, and when I exported it, I included one that was the model, the implant model. So I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to select to open with 3D Builder. Now you could do this in Mesh Mixer, I just don't recommend it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make solid. I'm going to make those implants part of the model as opposed to separate objects. First of all, it's going to make me confirm my units. Your default might be inches or something else. Make sure you confirm it's millimeters, otherwise that will mess things up. Click import, and now I'm really going to do one thing, and that is I'm going to click on it so that it's selected. You can see how it's blue around it. I'm going to come to edit. I'm going to click merge. Basically, it knows there are separate objects. These implants are floating within the model. We want to merge everything. Now, again, this would be make solid or Boolean operation of combining, not combine, but addition in Mesh Mixer. And Mesh Mixer does not like doing that. Let's just, it struggles, it takes forever, and I'm done already, by the way. So now I can go ahead and hit save as. Now I'm going to change it to an STL, and I'm going to use the same file name, but I'm going to call it merged, just so I know what that means. Okay, so now I can go back into Blue Sky Plan, and I can take that merged file, and I can drag and drop it. Now, one thing to warn you, it's not going to have the same coordinates. That is unfortunate. The thing that 3D Builder does is it loses the coordinates, but I'm going to end up trying to align it to the model. Now, I don't know if it's going to automatically align or if I'm going to have to do some point matching, which honestly I wouldn't be surprised if I have to do that. That's okay. But yeah, as you see, it's flipped over. Oh, we had it called the mandible. Did I do that? Let me go ahead and undo that real quick. And let's call it the maxilla. And let's just see automatic alignment. Let's just see how close it gets. Because it might align to the teeth in the CT scan, and then I won't even bother doing anything else. But if need be, I could use the model alignment to right here to model. Yeah, and this is honestly pretty darn close for what we're doing here. This is going to be just fine. So I'm not going to mess with anything else. It should be very close because it's still got the same teeth. It's still got everything the same. The only difference is where these are. And you can see how close the implants are. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get it that perfect. Plus, we're going to create this appliance with a little bit of a gap around these. So anyway, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this model. I'm going to conceal the implants, and I am going to create a new surgical guide. But before I do that, I'm going to take that appliance that I had here, and I'm going to drag and drop this into it. Now, I don't know which makes more sense: design the actual appliance first, or insert the screw. But I'm going to go ahead and get the screw in first. I'm going to drag and drop it in here. And, you know, I'm not sure if I should call it a mandible or a maxilla if it's going to flip it over. Let's stick with maxilla. I don't know why. I'm thinking maybe that'll keep it upright. And it didn't, but truth be told, it's pretty off angle, which means it's never going to be perfectly straight. No big deal. I can go ahead and click manual. And now I can bring this over and get this aligned. Okay. Doesn't have to be perfect. Well, we're aiming to be pretty close. And click manual, and now the alignment sphere will be changed a little bit. Oh, wrong direction. And if you want to make it even easier, you can turn on the grid. Let's hide the model for a second here. And let's just work on getting this perfectly centered. And in fact, this grid should be in the middle of the palette. So Let's go to model manipulation. Let's go to manual is already enabled to do. And let's try and line it up with this. Okay, that's looking good. Rotationally that way we're good. Now let's trying to look straight down this so we can let's line this up. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect anyways, but all right, so that looks pretty good. I could sit there and dink around with it for even more, but it's just really not necessary. Well, one thing is I do notice that it's upside down because I want this shorter tab to be what penetrates the palette. So I'm going to first turn this on, back off, and now rotate it 180 degrees. Okay, and it's not going to be perfect because I'm going to be tilting that in the arch anyways. So now let's go ahead and turn off the grid. Let's turn on the implant model. Oh man, I got to turn it 90 degrees still. So, okay. Let's go ahead and align this how we think makes the most sense. Now, one thing I do want to make sure is that it does not impinge on the tissue, okay? So there's lots of ways to do this just right. Now, one thing I do want to make sure is, do I want it all the way up there? Not really, because it's kind of creating a lever arm for the expansion. So let's go ahead and move it way back here, sort of centered between the screws, or the implants. To me, that would make the most sense. And if we want, we can turn on the CT scan, get rid of some of this fuzz. Let's isolate the upper jaw so that the lower one disappears here. So long as, there we go. And now we can dial this, well, we can't really dial it back because the data is already stripped away. But we can start looking a little bit here. And let me see, let's change up to F5, the perspective, which is the MPR view. And this might be our best bet for positioning. So here's, you know, technically, does it need to be in the center of the suture? You know, I guess not necessarily, but this will help me to see, is it impinging on tissue? And as I roll through, it's a little bit close there, but I think that's probably fine. I'm going to slide it up a little bit, and does not appear to impinge anywhere. Right there it does. Okay, so what do you know? The palate's not even on this patient. No big surprise there. Now we could impinge in the tissue. It's not going to be the worst thing in the world if it does, but if we can avoid that, we can wrap around this, which is going to be advantageous. We want to have it fully enveloped. Okay, and I might need to tip it. We'll see. So let's close that down. Now let's look in this view. Are we, you know, honestly, it looks like it's pretty well paralleled to the palate. So I don't know that there's going to be much advantage in angling it anterior posteriorly. Well, that's good. And then let's go ahead and just make sure we're looking in all views. Let's see where the palate is. Oh yeah, we're rotated, aren't we? And yeah, I'd say this more appropriately. Does that follow? Yeah, I'd say that follows the mid-palatal suture. This patient's definitely asymmetric, which is something I have to think about here for a second, because I feel like I've overdone it. Even though it's following the suture, it's not necessarily following where I want the expansion to occur as far as, you know, left to right. Okay, well, again, I don't want to spend too much time in this video. Just like the last one, I might change some things here, but at least we're getting the workflow. You decide where you want it. I'm not, you know, I'm not the person to teach you how to do these cases. I'm just trying to help you figure out ways to do them digitally. So make sure you get educated on what we're doing. I'm not, I hope I don't misrepresent. I'm not looking to teach you how to do it, just how to maybe incorporate some digital techniques. Okay, so just making sure it doesn't impinge anywhere. We're pretty close, but not actually impinging, and it's yeah, I think we're good. That's about as good as I can conceptually make it. Let's go ahead and open this up. Let's turn off the manual so we don't accidentally move it. Let's hide this surface, turn back on the implant model, and it looks like that's where we want our screw. Okay, so that's locked. That's where I want it. I'm going to leave it there. And now, and honestly, if I look at it right here, it looks to be pretty well centered between these teeth. I think this will work. Okay, so now, what do I need to do? Well, I'm going to go ahead and bring in that other object as well. I'm going to drag and drop it in here. This is the appliance splitter. I'm going to copy it into here. I'm going to, oops. I'm going to call it the maxilla. It doesn't really matter. Let's let it come in. And now I'm going to just tell it to align to the model. And the model I'm going to click is that other expansion screw. And there it is. The coordinates that they originated from are in the same environment, so they should snap right together without any additional work. And notice it extrudes right through the model. I don't care. And I'll show you why in just a minute. For now, I'm going to hide both of these. Don't need to see either one of them. Well, it might not be the bad idea to see the screw itself. And I'm going to create a surgical guide. So at this point, I want to make sure that I'm in the advanced module. And that's going to give me the option to do a surgical guide. Before that, we didn't have that option. Okay, so let's make sure we're on this model up here, the purple one. That's where we're going to draw on. I'm going to draw my curve, click on this, and now hold the shift button. And this appliance, as I was taught, does not need to be that big. Truly, most of the anchorage and force is being applied to the palate, and the implants are holding it still, but we don't need to be too crazy with how big it is. And again, there are other much better experts in the field that'll tell you how big, if I'm telling you something wrong, or if they think it should be bigger, smaller, or whatnot. I'm hoping they'll chime in and help to further educate me and help me maybe share some insight, and I will be more than happy to share what I learned from them, because that's the purpose of this, is to share. I got my education largely from Dr. Richard Ting and Dr. Mariana Evans. Dr. Richard Ting helped me get started with the MSC appliances, with the maxillary skeletal expander that was developed by Dr. Juan Moon. And then Dr. Mariana Evans has helped me get up and running with the U-Penn appliances on some of my younger patients. And I don't do a lot of these. You know, I'm a general dentist, and this isn't a big portion of my practice, but it is something I think is pretty awesome that we can provide. Okay, so that's my guide, and now I'm going to go ahead and click Create Surgical Guide. But let me check my settings, make sure. This is going to be 3 millimeters thick, that's fine. I'm going to change that later, but for now we'll leave it 3 millimeters thick. Tools, let's see what the offset is. Tools Preferences. My offset, basically the space between the model and it, is 0.1 millimeters. Or sorry, yeah, 0.1 millimeters. That should be fine. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and click Create Surgical Guide. It doesn't have any implants viewing, it's just letting me know that. That's fine. And so now let's get it going. Now, one thing I should have done, I should have hit save. I didn't, and hopefully that doesn't burn me, but that's just a fact of life. When you're working on these big cases, make sure you save often. And when you're doing this stuff, when it's calculating, it's doing a lot of work, and it's tempting to jump on Facebook or do something else while it's processing. I would suggest getting your phone out if you want to look at Facebook. Because, again, it's not that it will crash, but there's a chance. And sometimes these other windows will pop up as it kind of like hides this window essentially, but not a big deal. I'm just going to let my computer set. And I could have paused the video so you don't have to listen to me talk, but I think what I'm saying right now is sort of important. So just make sure you are respecting the fact that the computer is processing a lot before you move into another software. Okay? All right, so we are done there. Now real quick, I'm going to hit pause so I can save it. Okay, and I'm back. It's saved. Now when I'm looking at this from that angle, it looks like this is really tipped this way, but when I look at it, I mean, it looks pretty well level. I mean, I can maybe swing that way a little bit. Let's look from the grid from the very front of the patient. And I mean, they have an asymmetry, but if I simply rotate their model a little bit, it doesn't seem like it's tipped this way or that way. So I'm going to leave it. Yeah, I'm going to leave it. Sorry, just you see things when the model's just sitting there and you kind of wonder. She does, if we show you the lower model, have, first of all, the crossbite, and she has, interestingly enough, she may have a functional shift to the right, but her midline is not shifted that way, which tells me she's, you can see the space over here. She's got a shift to her right. Her midline is shifted. We're going to have to shift over. So that does make more sense when you think about the fact that this right here might be her midline, and we need to kind of get things over there. So again, I know it's deceiving, but that is something we're dealing with in this case. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got here. Let's go ahead and turn on that splitting appliance here, and good, it went all the way through it. That's what I was kind of wondering, or I don't want to say worried, but I was wondering about. I could always grab it and slide it up if I needed to, but I don't need to, which is great. So now I've got everything I need. I am going to augment this. Now, normally I would do that in Mesh Mixer, and I think I'm going to. We do have the model editing panel. Let's see, model. That might, I guess that is only in the model manipulation, the model editing module. Yeah, and honestly, I don't think I would want to use it here for this. I need to inflate this to get it to encapsulate the whole screw. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and click File, Export Data, and I am going to export. What am I going to export? Basically everything that I have shown. And I'm going to create a subfolder for it because I think that's pretty much all I need, but I want to have everything. So separate files into a folder, and I'm going to go ahead and say everything that is visible should be automatically checked, and it is. Click Export. Yep, this is going to burn an export. That's fine. You should have already burned an export if you're using the same computer. For the previous video when we made surgical guides, so you wouldn't be charged an additional export at that point. I am using a different computer to create this video, so I'm going to get charged a second export, but that's all right. And I'm going to create a new folder. I know it's going to create another subfolder, but I want to just see U-Penn Appliance. Okay, click OK, and then it's going to spit out all those files. So let's take a look and see what we've got. Here is everything. We've got the model merged, we've got the surgical guide, which is the appliance, the splitter screw, and the expansion screw. Awesome. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the merged model. Okay, so now I can, here's the model. And let's take a look at, let's insert our expansion screw, append that. don't want to repair that. I want it to come in exactly the way I had it designed. And let's bring in the surgical guide as well. Append, no. All right, so what am I doing here is I'm just going to basically, I don't even need to see the model, as I'm going to start inflating the surgical guide so that it fully envelops this. I'm going to turn this strength up. Alright, so you know what? I got a better idea. Let me do something here. I'm going to try something a little different. Let's first of all, let's hide this. And let's just drag and drop this. Append. No, let's see where it ends up. So it should be right there. And instead, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm not sure how this is going to work. Lasso. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and just click F to erase and fill. And let's see what I get. Much better. That was much faster. So now I can mess with these little sliders to try and get it where I want it to be. Now I don't want it to indent, so I want to go the opposite direction potentially. I'm so used to doing extraction space with these tools that I'm going to have to kind of think backwards. So let's bring this back over here. There we go. And let's take a look. I'm going to keep it positive. I want to try to aim for, yeah, right there. Sorry. I'm going to probably just type in a number and maybe go with +4. That seemed to be the best look I've had so far. Let's hit 4 and then hit tab and see what it gives us. That looks pretty good to me, honestly. Click accept. And now let's go ahead. I'm going to hit Control G just to create a, well, that didn't really. Sometimes it'll create a surface group out of that in case I needed to reselect it. But honestly, that looks pretty good. If I turn on, you can see the difference here. I could inflate it more if I wanted, but this is pretty darn thick. I can click this button and see inside it. And truth be told, I don't care if it's super thin right here. That really actually doesn't matter because there's so much other going to be else that's going to be supporting the pressure. Most of the pressure is going to be applied to the pallet itself. In fact, creating vent holes isn't the worst idea in the world, so that you can have the cement extrude out of there. So let's look where the screw is. The screw's in here. Good deal. That looks good. And yeah, if you wanted it to be even thinner, this is me being a rookie, not knowing how thick it should be, but if you wanted it to be even thinner, then you certainly could. You saw the way I could have done that, and that would have worked. So, but I'm going to leave it like this, and if I feel like I need to, after talking to some other people, if I need to thin it out, I will, either by hand or with a handpiece or with coming back in here digitally. So anyway, so the point is though, I've got this done. I've augmented this how I want to, and so now I'm going to simply export this back into that same folder, and I'm just going to call this my palatal coverage. Okay. So now I'm going to minimize this so I've still got access to it if I want. And I'm going to click on palatal coverage. Well, first, no, I want this. I need this portion. I don't need the surgical guide. I do not need the model. I do need this, and I do need this. Now I'm going to open up 3D Builder. I'm going to create a new scene, okay, a blank scene. And I'm going to drag and drop all of these into here, okay? Now, I want, yes, that's how I want to do it. So let's go ahead and look at this. I've got everything in here, okay? I'm going to say, yes, that's the appropriate measurements. And now, if I click on this object or this object, I can highlight individual ones. And I'm going to try I'm going to use this to subtract. Now, I'm not sure which one to subtract first. I think I'm going to subtract this panel first. So let's go ahead and click Edit and Subtract. This should segment it into one piece. Now, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about the fact that it essentially separated from here. I could have probably actually separated them both at the same time, but that's all right. I'm now going to deselected everything, and now I'm going to click Subtract and let this subtract from the rest of it. I'm not sure if it would have been better had I exported or subtracted both of them at the same time, because now this has kind of a funky lineup, and that was probably a bad idea. And I might even retry that on this video to show you, so there you go. It worked. But I did have to cut that model essentially twice, and that was, I'm not sure if that's a good idea or not. So yeah, I don't like it because you can see these lines, which are most likely single planar, so that it wouldn't actually print, but they're hard to see. So let's go ahead and hit Control Z, and instead let's unclick everything. Now let's click this, and let's subtract. Let's merge these. Let's try that. Let's merge these. Okay, and now those are one solid object. Let's click Subtract. One solid object being subtracted. Yes, much better, much cleaner. So there you go. That's why, like I said, this video is going to be sort of off the cuff. And there you go. I moved it. That's why I was just Control Z and undoing. So now I've got two different pieces. I can print each one of these individually. So let's deselect. I'm going to select one, and this is going to be the patient's right side. I'm going to click File, Save As, and this STL, and I had the paddle coverage. I'm going to call this segmented right, and then I will save this side as this segmented left. Export, save as, left. And so now I should have two separate objects, each of which, let's take a look. Let's see what they look like. I've got left and right. Now I see they're the exact same file size, which makes me think that in fact they both got exported at the same time. I don't do enough work in 3D Builder to know, but it should be easy to correct. So yeah, this is supposed to be just this side, the left. So I'm going to go ahead and double click, and I'm just going to double click that side, delete, and now I've got this one side. If I want, I can do a little analysis inspector, but there's no problems with it. Click export, and then I'm just going to save right over top of that previous left one. The reason I'm doing this is I think I'm going to want to print these independently. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on, or in fact, we'll just hit Control Z. And hit I to invert, delete the other side. Once again, analyze, should be fine. Export, and now this is the right side. And just to be safe, let's go ahead and export it one more time. In this one, I'm just going to delete that left or right annotation. And that way I still have it, the full set, if I want to test later, printing the whole thing at once. But that just seems silly to me, because now I can orient things the way I want them to. In fact, well, yeah, I wouldn't recommend printing it flat to the print bed. You could try that. I don't recommend it because you're going to have some distortion on the hole where the in this hole. But you should now be able to, let's take a look. Rayware. I showed in the previous video how we can export both surgical guides and the model and get it printing, but in this version portion, I'm going to just go ahead and let's not save that. Let's close this. Don't save. And so in this one, let's say whatever the Moonray S, that's fine. And I'm going to select the next dent. Oh, I'm not logged in. Okay, let's just go back. And we'll just use Sprint Rays. Well, yeah, we should just use their splint model, Sprint Resin. You want something to be in the mouth long term, and I'd have to check the IFUs to make sure that's okay. But point is, pick your resin that you're going to print in. And now take the left and the right, drag and drop them in here. And what I would do to print this is I'm going to click base on this and this. So you're thinking, well, didn't I just say not to print them down? I absolutely did. But I'm now going to grab it and turn it 180 degrees. Trying to keep this top layer as the last thing that prints. And truth be told, you can't do it as one layer because these aren't flat. They have this indent, and that's going to cause some bridging problems. But now I can print this with supports, and there's going to be some supports on the paddle side, but whatever, you polish that off. It's not going to be a big deal. If you wanted to print it over here on this side, where, you know, you could do that, but I would rather just polish the paddle side where it's not a big deal, and then have the tongue side be as smooth as possible. So now you print these two guys off. You slide your screw in. It should be pretty darn intimate enough that you can just basically cement it on there and not have to align it on a model, because there's going to be very little wiggle room, and it should be well adapted. Again, haven't tried it yet. This is kind of a food for thought. I'll probably post more videos in the future if I get this to work and can actually show me fabricating the appliance from these two pieces. I actually have a lab designing the real one that we'll be using, but I'm going to do this as well just so I can see if this is a good digital technique. All right. Well, thanks for paying attention. And this is a long video. Hopefully it was interesting. All right. Bye for now.